Still can't vote for myself. So, as the commander, you're going to need to do certain things. You're going to realize the battle conditions you're in. This map is very large. It's a good map for about 30 to 40 people. Like, that means there's constant pressure along the whole line here on this diagonal from up here in A4, this top area, all the way through. If there's no constant pressure, you can just rotate in a big circle and mess people up. So that comes to mobility. Mobility is the most important thing on this map. So because we're Brenodi, we're not NF, our vehicles benefit significantly from having cannons instead of the missile launcher. It's good, but it's just better to get the cannon first on Brenodi. So the main reason for this differences are the different classifications of tanks. So for Brenodi, we're going to want to go into physics.
Research is now complete.
So the reason we want to go into physics is because electrical engineering, NF is going to be going into it, and they're going to be getting the guided research out of it. So but you want to compete with their fast 3-phase engine. So you get your deflective.
Research is now complete.
Deflective is good against all missile launchers. And your nuclear fission here, that has your engine in it.
Research is now complete.
So now that you've realized why you've picked physics to fight the Northern faction on Duststorm here, which is just an example of a large open map. There are a few large open maps. After you get your deflective armor, your nuclear fission, and your fission reactor, your fourth piece of research you're going to want to do in this tree is projectile physics.
Research is now complete.
And then you're going to get heavy caliber machine gun. This allows your APCs to kill other vehicles. So if a light tank comes up and they want to kill your APC can fight back. It's very important for your troops to be able to fight light tanks early on, because light tanks are much better than AFEs in my opinion.
Research is now complete.
So after you get deflective armor, nuclear fission, get your fission reactor, get your heavy caliber machine gun, your extended range cannon because you're Brenodi. So now you have a machine gun, you have an armor, you have a cannon, you have an engine. You have every single piece that you need to put on a medium tank for them to be fairly effective. You're going to want to get a missile launcher, but I'll explain that a little deeper once we get through the tree here to show you why you're researching it and at what progression this is happening. So by the time we research medium tank chassis here, the game is probably reaching at about 18 to 20 minutes if you're doing it pretty quick. And you've stopped them from killing your radar at all costs. Then you're going to come back over to physics. You're going to collect your aerodynamic shell, which is your tier 3 shell.
Research is now complete.
Then you're going to get heavy duty cannon.
Research is now complete.
Well, actually, I should have asked myself a question. Right after I got heavy or medium tanks, so after I've done all my physics research, I've collected all of this great stuff, and I've gone into upgraded chassis and I've gotten my medium tank for my team, I have to ask myself, is my team ahead right now or are they behind? If they're behind, we go into biology.
Research is now complete.
Then we go over here to the weaponry. We don't need the rest of the research. We already have an armor. We already have a really fast engine that cools well.
Research is now complete.
So in here, because we're Brenodi, and we've already gotten a cannon, the next best thing, if we're behind, is to get the biological warhead. We flush out our tanks. We have a damage over time. We have fast tanks that can run away, and our
complete.
shells are really good at long range. So if you're good at sniping people, that's the one to get. So let's backtrack a little here. You complete all this stuff in here just like I said, and we got the medium tanks, but your team's ahead. What you're going to do is you're going to rush right back into physics. You're going to grab your aerodynamic shell, and then you're going to grab the heavy duty range cannon, which is the tier 3 cannon for extended range. And then you're going to run over to biology. You have a little time to spare right now in between now and what you're going to be getting your guys. So instead of getting biological warhead, you're going to get incubator missiles.
Research is now complete.
And then once you've gotten your virulent warhead, which is your tier 3 warhead, so now not only do you have a machine gun to fit your tank with, that's a tier 2 that can fit the tier 2 slot, you have a tier 3 heavy duty range cannon to put on your heavy tanks when they're researched, and you also have the virulent cannon, which flushes out every single item or weapon slot possible for the tank. So we're going to come back over to here. So, shoot. Then you go over here, get your advanced chassis. We're probably nearing on about 31 minutes now. These tanks that we're getting them pretty much behind. Like, we've given up our bonus right now in order to pretty much have super tanks as soon as they come out the door. I don't have to like tell people to go refit their tanks and stuff like that. Right out the door they have these amazing tanks. So probably build a vehicle factory here. Give you guys an example. So by the time you get these pretty decent tanks, there's not really much left to research in terms of like urgency. Now at this point, it's researching what you want and what you think is going to beat the team, the enemy team.
Research is now complete.
So depending on what you want, if you are having a problem with infantry, you can plop on your 50 cal machine gun. I'm not really going to get it. So I'm going to take all this off. Show machine guns. See, these are all the machine guns we got. This is what the research got me. The 50 cal machine gun, the bigger one, the depleted uranium machine gun. This one hurts armor, or vehicle armor. So it's important to have. And here's the engine we got, fission reactor. You're going to want to put on deflective here. Make sure it's not the plane armor. So I would like to consider this one of the best tanks you can get. Like, I didn't max out the armor and stuff like that, but in general, the dual range shell and the virulent warhead, very effective. Not many tanks can really compete with that combo. And the same goes for NF. So now we're trying to get research about what we want. The enemy has heavies at this point. We have heavies. Like, we had just gotten our virulent warhead, and they got heavies probably about 2 minutes ahead of us, and we're now behind them a little bit, but they don't have the same research we have into the heavy tanks. Like, our heavy tanks, by the time they come out, will be tank killers, not like paper that kind of just float around and waste money. So another thing you could do at this point is go into plasma. I like plasma because it has a high damage output. I like to be an engineer. I just get the cooldown thing. Cooldown upgrade. What's it called?
Research is now
It gives you a
complete.
good 15% cooldown. It's really good.
Research is now complete.
So this has an 84 damage. This has a 67 damage. They are significantly different shells. They have special properties to both of them. But the stat damage is really important when you're right up against the other tank, because you charge them. Like, if you got like 6 of these tanks charging at you, and they're all using plasma, and they're all got these virulent warheads on, and you're just pounding away some damage right there, like, they can't hold out for very long, especially when you're focusing down specific tanks. So that would be the methodology behind getting that kind of research. And this is all relevant to what's happening on the map at the current moment. Probably we're at 45 minutes, because it really does take a lot of time to get nukes and to get plasma like into there. At this point you're like, what the heck am I going to get? Well, there's a lot you're going to have to get. So we go over here, chemistry. We're going to want to rush the improved flagration compounds, because this is a really good anti-vehicle weapon. But we didn't have time to get it. We had other weapons to get, and we had time to save. We couldn't just rush into this tree. And then the next thing we're going to get, we're going to get absorbent armor. Because the team needs a different type of armor. The enemy already knows we're using reflective, and they're kind of changing their strategies about it. So you kind of flip them on their head. And then you go over to improved heat transfer fluids, and you get your team a second engine. This second engine is better for your heavy tanks, where they can just sit there with their aerodynamic shells and like artillery shoot them. So you would stand maybe over here, and you would have a spotter, and you would communicate that you're hitting the vehicles, or well, hitting the base over here where the NF would be. So after you get your heat transfer fluids, because we're BE, we're going to want to go over to improved detonation compounds. Everybody loves thermobaric shells. They deal so much damage.
Research is now complete.
So high explosive shells, these are like probably like, I think, my second favorite shell in the game. My favorite shell is
research is now complete.
bio cannon shell. That was implemented recently, and I love it.
Research is now complete.
So by at this point, if you haven't won the game, you've done a really bad job as a commander. And this is just to keep up with the standards of the opponents, because the opponents at this point are usually pretty good. But most people don't know why I would research in this way when you're playing the game. So if you're one of the guys running around, sometimes you're not looking at the research. You don't care. It's not your job to care. You got to make sure that the commander is knowing what they're doing when they're researching everything, and why they researched everything. So now I'm going to do another video on NF, and why NF would do certain things in their own way for Dust Storm here, and large on very large maps like this map. where there's a lot of room for mobility and those kind of mechanics. So we're going to rush into electrical engineering here because this map is very large.
Research is now
It
complete.
has a lot of land to be mobile on, and we're going to need a fast engine. I like to get the advanced magnet research engine first because I think
Research is now
three-phase is
complete.
really, really good compared to reactive. And it's super beneficial for NF on this map.
Research is now complete. Research is now complete.
So at the beginning of the game, you chose electrical engineering because you knew that there's going to be a lot of mobility necessary for this map. So we're going to go into tracking after we got that stuff because there's no machine gun in this tree. So
Research is now complete.
you need to now ask your team, do you guys want homing missiles or guided missiles? I really like homing missiles because it's you lock on, you fire, you drive away. It's really easy for it. Maybe if the team is a little bit better, that they'll enjoy
Research
the
is now
guided more.
complete.
So once you get those three, you rush over to mechanical engineering.
Research is now complete. Research is now complete. Research is now complete.
So now that we have our engine, we have our missile launcher, we have our armor, and we have our medium tank chassis, we have to determine what we want to do. Are we ahead or are we behind? So if we're ahead, rush over to biology here.
Research is now complete.
Go into biological weaponry. Well, maybe it might be better to do the behind first. So you would
Research
go
is
into
now
biology
complete.
anyways if you're behind as well, and you would just get your biological cannon because you already have your missile launcher, and now you're going to want your biological cannon because NF is missile launcher focused instead of cannon focused. It's kind of the inverse of Brenodi.
Research is now complete.
So because we got biological cannon, so if we're ahead though, we're going to get the incubator tanks instead of the biological cannon.
Research is now complete.
And then we're going to grab the virulent shell.
Research is now complete.
So at this point we got to come back here. Depending on if you got homing or if you got the guided, you can pick whichever tier 3 research you want. I'm going to go with the homing AI. So that's the tier 3 research to fill out the slots.
Research is now complete.
And then we're going to grab the upgraded homing missiles.
Research is now complete.
So now we have a virulent cannon, tier 3, and we have tier 3 homing missiles. These tanks are tank killers. These guys are hard to deal with. Then you're going to rush over to the advanced chassis. This is probably at about 30 minutes.
Research is now complete. Research is now complete.
Okay, so now we got the heavy tanks. Let's go build one. Let's see what they look like. So reactive is a really heavy armor. I really don't prefer it over other armors, but it's all our team has right now. So you're going to put your virulent cannon to flash that out. Then you're going to pick your choice. I like to go with the improved homing ML. Fix up the armor. And voila. I gotta put this up now. Build another one. There we go. Yep, the missiles shoot pretty straight. Virulent cannon does tons of damage. So, but what do you do now? You're still not winning. You have these killer tanks, and the enemy is just doing still a lot better. We're starting to near on 35 minutes. Well, logical thing would be go into chemistry.
Research is now complete.
And you're going to need some tanks that can just sit there and just deal with people.
Research is now complete.
The secondary engine is pretty important, and we're going to have to, after we get this engine, we're going to have to go grab the armor.
Research is now complete.
And just so you know, still at this point, we have not gotten a machine gun. We have pretty much fully neglected our machine gun crazy people, because this is the way we do things here at NF.
Research
You could have
is now
grabbed that
complete.
when we went into biology, but I just didn't, because I forgot about it. You would grab it when you go into biology. So we got a new engine, we got a new armor. Gonna grab our machine gun, secondary machine gun.
Research is now complete.
On NF, I just don't think the machine gun is as important because the light tank is just so much better than the AFV that
Research is now complete.
Brenodi has to get a machine gun in order to deal with light tanks properly. So you're going to get that, then you're going to rush over, because you didn't really go in there for any of the weapons. You already have one of the best weapons in the game for your mobility and stuff like that. So you're going to go get nukes.
Research is now complete.
I think now, by the time we're doing this, we're nearing on like
Research is now
45
complete.
minutes. By the time HIT Warhead's probably done, if you're really quick with stuff, or maybe if I'm just bad and I can't do head math.
Research is now complete.
So just like with BE, if you haven't won by this point, like the research that you're about to research is not going to impact the game. It will, but it won't. Not in the way you think it will. So that's all the research brush trees that I would recommend on Duststorm for Brenodi and for NF.